watching GearZ, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better prices every day.
Hey, welcome to GearZ. You know, one question that I hear a lot is, how do I get real, serious, reliable horsepower out of a newer late model vehicle? And that question is usually followed by somebody talking about slapping on a turbo or a supercharger. And that's great. Those are both great systems, and they both have their pros and cons. But when it comes to a bolt-on system, man, it's hard to beat a supercharger, because there's companies out there that offer literally everything you're going to need, and it fits like an OEM part. And right there, that's where a lot of guys just shut off. They're like, no way. It's going to be too expensive, it's going to be too hard to put on, and it's going to mess up my vehicle and blow it up or void my warranty. Well, instead of trying to convince you that that's not the case with words, we're just going to show you that that's not the case. Okay, what we have here is the perfect candidate for a supercharger, and very similar to what most of you are driving out there. It's about 5 to 7 years old, has about 70,000 miles on it, it's paid for, and you are starting to get bored with it. Yeah, it'd be nice to have something with more power to run with this new junk that's coming out, right? Right. Well, a supercharger will do that for you. Come on. Now, the kit that we're using comes from ProCharger. It's specifically for that model Ram truck, and it's an all-inclusive system. Check this out. It comes with a centrifugal supercharger. You've got all the brackets, all the hardware, all the pulleys to put it in place. Then you've got all the tubing, all the elbows to run the air charge from the supercharger to the intercooler and back. Then you get new fuel injectors to take care of your fuel system. You have a Diablo Sport tuner to make sure your tuning is right, get everything running right. And then, of course, you've got the intercooler that makes a ProCharger system so unique. Now, I know this looks like a lot of stuff, but believe it or not, it will all fit under the hood of that truck, and it will look like OEM. You won't even know it's there until, of course, you stomp the pedal and unleash the fury. All right, the first step is to get rid of some of this stock stuff and make some room. So, off comes the air box, the air intake tube, and all this plastic over here. Next, we'll move to the center and pull off the engine cover and the radiator shield. This will give us room to remove the grill, the coolant overflow tank, it's like taking out a kidney, and the horns. The next step is to drain the radiator and remove the upper hose. Okay, to remove the fan is going to require a special tool, and you can get that from the O'Reilly Loan-A-Tool program, and this is a clutch holding tool. Now what this does is hold the pulley from spinning while you break the nut loose with a big wrench. With the fan out of the way, we'll pull out the fan shroud and the electric fan. And finally, pull off the crank pulley with a 7-inch gear puller we also got from O'Reilly. Okay, now we're ready to start putting new stuff on, starting with this ATI Super Damper. Now, if you'll notice, the original crank pulley and damper does not have a keyway in it. It's just a press fit. But the new damper does. But we're not going to be able to use it because there's no keyway cut into the crankshaft. But we've got to have something because we've got to keep that damper and pulley from spinning when it's powering the supercharger, which means we need to drill a hole in the crank and the pulley and put a pin in it. Now, I know that sounds crazy impossible until you see the jig that comes with the kit. As you can see, this bolt's in place. It allows you to put the drill bit right where it needs to go, and it even comes with a pin to put in place. It's details like this that make the ProCharger kit so easy to install. With that finished, you can breathe a sigh of relief because you just drilled your crank and you survived. And that is the toughest part of this install. Now we're going to move on to the intercooler. Now, notice it's going to mount by these brackets that I've gotten into place, and they allow you to relocate the horns up here and the power steering cooler down here. So everything is still in place and functioning like it should. Once you have the intercooler in place, just tighten everything down. The main supercharger bracket is next, and it just bolts to existing holes in the head and the block using the supplied hardware. The bracket is designed to position the supercharger on the passenger side so you have easy access. Speaking of supercharger, here it is. This is the reason for all this madness. And it just slides into the bracket and bolts in place. We'll finish it up by putting on the idler pulleys, then the belt. All right, the supercharger's in place, so is the intercooler. Now it's just a matter of connecting the two with that big old pile of tubing. Hey, welcome back to GearZ and our supercharger install on this 2012 Ram truck. Now, with 390 horse stock under the hood, you might be wondering, why are you putting a supercharger on? Well, there's 160 reasons. That's how many horsepower that ProCharger says we're going to pick up by putting on this kit. And that would bring the grand total to 550 horsepower under the hood. That's a pretty good reason. Now, there's just a few things we have left to hook up, so let's get back to it. Now, as you can see, most of the tubing is in place. The main tube runs from the supercharger down to the intercooler. It also has a provision here for the bypass valve, and it's designed to open and relieve pressure when you lift off the throttle so you don't blow everything up. Now, the upper tube comes from the intercooler and up into the throttle body, and then of course you have your air inlet that pulls fresh air through a high flowing filter and into the supercharger. It's also where your PCV hooks up. Okay, with all the tubing taken care of, the old table's starting to look pretty empty, except for this area right here, which means we're going to turn our attention to those fuel injectors. To put them in, we're going to unbolt the fuel rails, pull out the stock injectors, and install the new ones. If it's been a while since you replaced your spark plugs, now would be a good time to do that as well. After that, it's just a matter of installing the new map sensor, the radiator overflow, and then reassembling the fans and the grill, and you're back in business. The final step is to download the new tuning program from ProCharger and install it in the vehicle using the tuner. It's about as simple as punching a few buttons and following the prompts. And that is it. Now just start it up, check for leaks, and enjoy that cool blower sound, man. Yeah! Now, obviously, that supercharger is going to be ramming a lot more air into that engine, which means you probably ought to do something about the air coming out. The catback exhaust system is a great way to do that. Now, what we have here is the Flowmaster American Thunder catback system designed specifically for that Ram, so it's going to bolt right in place of the stock exhaust system. Now, it starts out with a 3-inch inlet, then it goes into the Flowmaster muffler, then you have 2.5-inch dual pipes coming out, you have factory hangers, so it's going to go right in place. Then you have mandrel bends, so you get great flow. You've got a special crimp right here that works in conjunction with these stainless clamps, so the pipes not only don't leak at the joints, but you can disassemble them if you ever need to. Then, of course, it goes right out to a dual tailpipe with stainless steel tips that look just like what's factory on the truck. Matter of fact, you're not even going to realize this is on there till you start it and you hear that rumble. Then when you step on the gas, you're going to get that Flowmaster sound. Now, if you need more flow than this, you probably need to look at some headers. Take a look. Now, putting headers on a late model vehicle has always been a little dicey because there's not a lot of room under there and you still have to pass emissions. Well, Flowtech has these shorty smog headers that solves both of those problems. Now look at these nice rounded radiuses. You're going to get great flow. You have thick 3/8-inch flanges, so they're not going to warp on you, and you have a high temperature coating. All things you expect from a quality header. Now, the strange shape is because these are designed to bolt right in place of the stock restrictive manifolds on that Hemi and bolt right up to the factory exhaust. So no cutting, no welding, nothing. Now, they come with all new replacement hardware and some really good gaskets, so you're not going to have to replace these in a year or two. The best part is these are emissions legal in 49 states, which is why we are putting these on.
All across America, in thousands of garages, carports, and backyards, there sits a project that has become hindered, stalled, or halted by the lack of time, money, or expertise by the owner. Sometimes the project is so lopsided that the owner just needs to sell it and start over. Other times, all it needs is a kickstart to get it moving in the right direction again. That's where we come in. Gears on the Road is brought to you by Painless Performance Products. American made, American proud.
You know, if you watch Gears very much, you know we're always looking for ways to encourage young people to get out, get involved, and learn the skills that they're going to need to have a career in the automotive industry, or at least be able to build their own project if they want to. And anytime we find an organization or a school that teaches that kind of stuff, man, we try to showcase them. Well, a few years ago, we ran across an organization called Rebuilding Generations that does just that. Check it out. Rebuilding Generations is located in Meridian, Idaho, and the purpose of it is to teach young people the skills and techniques needed to build or restore a car by putting them under the teaching of seasoned experts and giving them hands-on experience twisting wrenches, welding panels, or whatever.
We have a younger generation out there that is so attached to the electronics and phones and the internet, Facebook, social media, Twitter, Instagram, pick whichever one of the social medias that are out there. And you know, you have an older generation that has so much wisdom. You know, how are they going to learn if we don't teach?
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got to teach.
Now, these aren't just some old junkers that they're throwing together either, as evidenced by this Mustang that they had at the SEMA show this year. This was a ground-up build with the majority of the work actually being done by the kids.
A lot of times think, oh, kids didn't build this car. Watch the videos. It'll show you them spraying the lizard skin. It'll show you a 7-year-old grinding the welds. You know, it'll show you a 12-year-old welding, you know, into the car. Yeah, Ian and Joe and everybody else and Jeremy and all those guys are there supervising and watching, but the kids are doing the work.
We try to have tool time, if for a better lack of, where we show them what the tools are, different wrenches. You lay them out and you show them specifically what they do. So you're adding to their knowledge base, and it is shocking how fast these young kids pick it up.
And the smile on their face when they look at, they actually laid down a good bead, you know, and they did that, or someone asked them about it and they can actually talk educatedly about the brakes and the different parts that they actually installed on the car. That's just priceless to me.
Another plus to the program is the fact that these kids are learning a lot more than just how to turn a wrench. They're also learning about life and how to work with others, how to have a good work ethic, and all of those things that are so important to keeping this industry moving forward.
The mechanical view or the mechanical vision of, hey, I want to do this a trade, has absolutely no value if they cannot handle their own emotions. Because the mechanical trades are by nature frustrating. And if they can't manage their own anger, and they can't manage their own emotions, and they can't handle the occasional ribbing and know how to handle, hey, that's inappropriate, and how I'm going to translate that into a good position, anything we teach them with a grinder or a paint gun is useless.
Now, you're probably wondering, how do I find out more about this program? Well, you can go to their website, or if you go to any of the major shows, you'll find them in one of the booths or with one of their cars there, because they're always traveling around trying to raise awareness for the charity. Matter of fact, that's what they were doing when they dropped by here and surprised us with the car, which is really cool. But since they're out on the road, we have a surprise for them. We know they're building 3 Camaros this year, so we talked to the boys at Painless Performance, and we are going to supply all 3 wiring harnesses for those projects. And now it's up to you. Listen, this younger generation is not going to learn about cars and trucks like we did unless we invest time and knowledge and passion into them. And if that's something you think you'd like to do, rebuilding generations is a good way to do it.
Quick tip, brought to you by E3 Spark Plugs, born to burn.
When you're restoring a vehicle and getting it ready to paint, one question that always comes up is, what about all that old seam sealer that's cracking and flaking off? Do I have to remove it? Can I just glue it down and pretend like nothing happened? Or do I even need it at all? Well, yeah, you need it, and yeah, you need to get rid of it if it's bad, and here's why. Seam sealer, when it gets old, starts to crack and lift, and that exposes the seam to moisture, which ultimately leads to rust. So that's why you need it, and that's why you have to get rid of it if it's bad. Now, generally getting rid of it involves some sort of a scraping tool, and sometimes even a heat gun to warm it up, make it soft to help you remove it. So yeah, it's a little bit of a long process. People don't want to mess with it. That's why they don't do it. But what you need to do is get rid of all the seam sealer. Then, before you put the new sealer down, make sure you've taken care of all the rust, all the damage, any rusty metal. Then, take your rust preventative paint, go down the seam, let it soak down in there. That'll protect the metal. Then take your seam sealer and go over the seam, and then paint the panel. Now, I know this is a couple extra steps, but if you do it this way, you'll never have to worry about a rusty seam ever again. If you'd like to learn more tips to make your life easier in the shop, check out the tips page on the website.
Parts Bin, brought to you by AutomotiveTouchUp.com Touch-Up Paint. With a press of a button, you can restore your car's original paint.
You know, one thing that virtually every car, truck project is eventually going to need is a wiring harness. Now, you can get a universal harness and make it work, but wouldn't it be nice if there was a direct fit wiring harness for whatever you were working on? Well, that's what Painless Performance specializes in. For example, they just came out with this wiring harness for this 70 through 72 Chevelle. Now, check this out. This is a 26 circuit direct fit chassis harness for the Chevelle. This is the harness that goes under the dash. Here's the fuse panel. This is the harness that goes under the hood. This is the taillight harness with factory-style pigtails. You've got auxiliary harnesses, you've got gauge harnesses, you've got a harness for the alternator, you've got harnesses for the steering column, whichever one you want to use. You've even got all the bulbs, man. Some of those are hard to find now. Now, obviously, if you have a Chevelle, you need this harness. But if you've got any old muscle car or truck, you need to check out Painless. They probably have the harness that you need.
What are you working on? Brought to you by Woodward Fabrication, selling quality metalworking equipment since 1966.
Today's What Are You Working On comes from Bob Swenson from Blue River, Wisconsin, and this is a project that he did with his 2 sons, AJ and Robbie. Now, this is kind of a unique project because it is actually inspired by one of the GearZ projects, the old Sure Trek we did a few years ago. Now, what he's got is a 1972 Dune Cat off-road go-kart. Now, he said he found this thing at a swap meet after seeing the Sure Trek show. That got him all going. And this thing was a basket case. He said the motor was missing, the tires were rotten, the frame was cracked, but he knew it could be cool. Now, Bob is an ASE certified mechanic, so he can handle a wrench, but he's also a gearhead. And so for an engine, he hunted down an 8 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine, grabbed the right clutch, and put it all together. Now, with the help of the boys, they rigged up a battery so they had headlights. They welded up the broken frame. They sandblasted and restored the wheels. They fabricated new bumpers. And then they fixed the broken and cracked fiberglass body and shot on House of Colors orange metal flake paint. And of course, they replicated the original stickers. So after about 200 hours and about $2,000, He said they rolled the cat out and they clocked that thing down the road at over 40 miles an hour, man. That is cooking. And they said it took home first place at the Richland County Fair. How cool is that? Now, you might be thinking, so what did all this early wrenching experience produce? Well, it produced 2 hot rodders is what it did, because both sons are now working on full-size vehicles and they're both studying to become master mechanics just like their dad. All because of a 1972 Dune Cat. Man, what a cool project. So guys, to recognize what a neat thing you've done, we hooked up with our buddies at Woodward Fab. We're gonna give you one of these bench vices to help you out on your next project. Also, we're gonna give you one of these project planning books so you can keep track of whatever project you're working on so you know what you've done to it and it can keep you on track. We're also gonna give you a couple of GearZ t-shirts. All 3 of you guys need one of those shirts. And then we're going to give you an O'Reilly gift card to help offset some of the cost you may be putting into one of your projects. Now, the rest of you guys, if you want to get in on this, want to get your project featured on the show, got to go to the website, go to GearZ Nation, go to What Are You Working On, and submit your project. The website's also the place to find out more information on any products you may have seen on the show, any GearZ merchandise, and how to join GearZ Nation so you can stream any of our episodes commercial-free. Finally, don't forget to like us on Facebook so you can get some behind-the-scenes footage of our weekly web series, Shifting Gears. All right, that wraps it up for us today, which means it is time for you to get out there and start working on something. Doesn't matter if it's a car, truck, motorcycle, boat, Dune Cat, doesn't matter. As long as you're building something with your own 2 hands. Get out there, work on something. We'll see you next time.